This is Rhea, and this is Just the Who of Us, where we talk about a range of topics, including life events, current events, spirituality, entertainment, family relationships, as well as answering listener questions and more.
This is good stuff. We need to be recording.
I know. I like to record early to get random little bits. So I had an idea for today. We were chatting, we were like, we don't really have like a topic per se, so my daughter had an appointment this morning and she conned me into letting her stay home the rest of the day. They dilated her eyes and stuff like that. And she's like, well, I can't see. I don't want to go to school. Okay. You're cute and you're sweet, whatever. So she's here. And so we were in the car and I was like, how about if we talked about like household dynamics and we have a teenager perspective? Because
cool.
She's 14. And so I know how diverse and complex your household is and mine, because I'm like, okay, well, you have my fiance, we raise a child together who is not biological to either one of us. And then my other 4 children, he is not the biological father. So you have him. And then you have my 4 biological children who have 3 different fathers, because I was a little loose back in the day and made some choices. But anywho, so you have my son, who is only biological, my son with half siblings. You have my two who share DNA but also have half siblings. You have my daughter who is a half sibling, and there's a lot going on here dynamic wise, and so I know that obviously you can relate to that. And so I was like, it would be kind of cool, I thought, if we had the teenage perspective from inside, that kind of house. It'd be cool. So your children are all in their 20s?
Well, I have one at home. He's going to be 16 this weekend.
Oh, nice.
But my older children and stepchildren are out of the nest now. I have one older son, my 34-year-old son, who lives in the town next to ours, and he's married and they had a baby in August. And then last week when I was on my my conference, I was in Florida last week. My son Norman, my youngest one, stayed with my older son Ben and his family, and he did that last year too, which I think is really good for their relationship as well. My divorce is recently final, so
congratulations.
Yeah,
ish.
Too bad. It is too bad it went that way, but
yeah. But my divorce from my ex-husband, it was kind of, we were apart for 5 years before we actually got divorced. Yeah, at least 5 years, maybe longer than that. Yeah, it was longer than that. It was, okay, so she's 14. Ooh, that might have been more like 10 years, because we tried for a few years after, but it was just, the household was toxic with us together. So yeah, but anyway, we were separated for years before we finally got divorced. And then when we finally got divorced, we were actually in a really, really good place. We're really good friends. And I'm glad it went that way, because had we got divorced when we split, who knows? We could have hated each other the rest of our lives, but we took time to work on our relationship because we had that separate space to do so, but anyway.
Yeah, my divorce didn't really take that long. I filed in August and it was done in March, but we've been separated for probably close to 3 years. And even that's not that long compared to, but some people keep saying to me, oh my God, it took such a long time. And I think it's because of the toxic part when we were together. That whole thing makes it seem like a long time, but
yeah,
I don't know. I really wanted to give every chance to turn things around, and it was the point of I needed to be able to move on with my life, because but and now I feel like we came through it with about as much grace as we could. He's a little manipulative and kind of narcissistic, but I
Yeah.
mean, I think when people behave that way, it's a reflection of their pain. So I want to be more compassionate than angry about it. And at the same time, that part of me that's naive and, lets people kind of take advantage um, kind of kicks in. And I do feel like getting angry is a healthy thing for me to do, kind of motivates me to advocate for myself,
Yeah.
but never want to be doing that in a like a lashing back or in an adversarial way. I still really
Yeah.
wanted to be fair and be compassionate. And so I think it still feels a little tweaky. It's very new, but I think, I think there's hope for us to have a good friendship. And my first husband and I have a good friendship. So,
Yeah, yeah. That's one thing that I don't want to say that I liked about you, but that's one thing that kind of interested me in our initial conversations was that you guys are in a good place now, and I can relate to that. And there's a lot of
hmm
people who can't. Um,
hmm
my father passed in the end of December, and him and my mom haven't been together since I was like 2.
hmm
So I'll be 38 in May. So for the past
hmm
36 plus years,
hmm
she's harbored hate for him essentially because of how things went.
hmm
He had some addictions, he had some habits, he had some things that weren't healthy. And, I say, I'm glad they split. There's certain things I wish would have happened, but whatever. I think it was healthier for her in the long run. She never
hmm
remarried or anything like that. He very quickly did. um you know but I wish they would have been able to set things aside for me
hmm
and for themselves
hmm
to rebuild that relationship. she,
hmm
she was the one who was wronged essentially
hmm
in the relationship itself, in that aspect. um you know but I wish that they would have been able to mend that relationship. But this was the late 80s too. And
hmm
I know things were different back then. Like, I don't know that staying friends with your ex was a thing. I don't know. Like, you know what I mean? Now there's
hmm
a lot more. You have relationship coaching, you have therapy that's pushed a lot. You have, things that encourage people to repair relationships, if
hmm
not for themselves, but for others too, the kids involved and everything like that. So I don't know
hmm
how that was back then because I wasn't aware enough. I was a kid,
Mhm, mhm,
but I do. I wish that would have been a thing, and I hope that more people can. I mean, even if you don't have kids, for the sake of your emotional health and well-being, can do that, repair those relationships, at least repair them, and move on healthy.
mhm,
If
mhm,
not, if you don't have kids to still be in each other's lives and stuff like that.
mhm, mhm. Yeah, my parents divorced when I was 5, and, um, they did a pretty good job of being peaceful with each other in front of us, whatever anger they had or whatever disagreements they had, they just didn't really do that in front of us. And my father wasn't around that much. It wasn't this every other weekend thing type of situation. But
Yep.
when I was with my first husband, his parents were divorced, and you couldn't put them both in the same room. I think I might have said that in our last conversation. And I think he learned a lot about the fact that it's possible to be friendly or to be at peace. And so when we got divorced, he knew what it felt like to be the child whose parents couldn't be in the same room together. He knew what it felt like to be divorced himself before that.
Yeah.
And then he also saw my parents being able to be, civil and, not the best of friends. They hardly ever saw each other, but when they were in the same place, we could all enjoy ourselves together and they didn't, make it difficult. So I think it was a new concept for him to think that it could be friendly.
Yeah.
And so I give him a lot of credit because it wasn't the way that his family typically went with that, because they kind of went with, you have to be loyal to your person and be against the other person.
Oh,
But that isn't
gosh.
necessary to do. And I think the other aspect is when there's been so much hurt that people can't let go of it. And it's triggered, is triggered by your past trauma, whatever
Yeah.
it attaches to that you're not even aware of,
Yeah.
that, makes it feel like more anchored in there. But
Yeah.
but yeah, it's much better for everybody concerned if people can get along, for sure.
Yeah. And that is a factor too. Your past experience, your parents' experience, your grandparents' experience, which most of our grandparents probably died together. You know,
Mhm.
it was
Mm,
more of a thing. And a lot of our parents probably aren't. You
mhm.
know, it's one thing that I didn't realize with my first marriage was important to me. Um,
Mhm.
going into the marriage, of course, the marriage was important, but I didn't realize essentially how important it is to me that my children are in complete home. Um, you know, not knocking anyone who is a single parent. Obviously, I've done it before, but you know, I have my children don't have the same father. Especially with that, it's important to me that I have a good relationship with my ex-husband for our
Mhm.
children, not just his biological children, but also for my older two children who still to this day call him their stepfather.
Mhm.
No offense to my fiance,
Mhm.
but you know, that they call him that too, but they've known him since they were pretty little and they kind of grew up around him. I mean, because we've known each other since high school. So,
Mhm.
to them, he's more of like a family friend than
Mhm.
a father figure. However, my him and so my fiance and my oldest son went to the shooting range the other day, and then they went last week and they went this week. My fiance is super big on gun safety, and it's one reason that I him allowed him have guns in the house is because I saw and I learned how safe he was with it.
Mhm.
He ordered a safe, a table side safe with his first purchase. He wasn't going to have one in the house without any kind of safe to store it in. And he has taken classes. He watches videos constantly. He's a super safe person. So, we've taken a couple kids with us, the older kids with us to the range. And so anyway, so my son went with him recently and he came home and he doesn't have the best relationship with his father. Um, so that's that by his father's choice. But he just came home and he was like, thank you for being a father to me. My son's 23 years old. He could be like, I don't care, whatever. He's a fabulous person. He's pretty responsible. There's certain things, we could work on, but I trust him. He's a phenomenal person. And, you know, the fact that he has someone phenomenal looking out for him, whether it be my ex-husband or my fiance, that's important. So my relationship with my ex-husband is important because I want that to still have that kind of wholeness if we can.
Mhm.
And maybe too because I was really young with my first two and I have absolutely no interaction with their fathers on by both choice. My choice because of their actions and their lack of attentiveness, and their choice because of whatever the hell else they're doing. But and then you have my youngest son who we're raising together, and just I don't know, like I said, maybe it's the point I'm at in my life, my age, my experience with my other two children when I was married before, and now, like, it's important to me, you know.
Mhm. Well,
I
it's
want everybody to know
relationships.
that. Yeah,
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 and the relationships that children have in their early years are so foundational for them, in terms of how they feel about themselves and
yeah,
how they feel about the world.
yeah,
So those relationships that they developed with you and with whoever they felt close to are always going to be important to them. And so it's good that you're able to support them in maintaining that relationship. And
Right.
when you and your first husband broke up, or your husband, when you split up, that it didn't have to mean the end of the relationships between
Yeah.
him and the kids, especially for the ones that don't have a relationship with their biological father, because they may have some, they may have some issues about their self-worth related to that. And so
Yes.
having someone they know really does care for them, and he cares about them because of the relationship that they have, not just because he was with you.
Right, right,
That
right.
probably means
Absolutely.
more to them than what even they're aware of. You know what I mean? It's part of like
Mhm.
how the foundational belief about how much you matter in the world, and you know what I mean? So it's really important for them to have those relationships.
Mhm. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I mean, one of my oldest daughter, uh, she has no relationship with her father. And I believe that the relationship that she has with my ex-husband and my fiance, those relationships help her to be part of who she is because it's not her father. You know, I think if she didn't have one or both of them, she might be a different person
Mhm.
because there would be no paternal support, you know? And so it's definitely it's important and it's effective. So our relationships with those former partners, it is kind of important for it to be at least healthy for the kids, you know?
Mhm.
And it's something that I had to learn later in life too, because I never had that with my own parents, you know? And so it's just one more of those things that like we don't know growing up, but it's important that we learn when we
Mhm.
get to a certain age because we should always strive to do better than those before us, right? And it's one thing that I also teach my kids too. It's important that we always strive to be better than those before us, no matter, because I have flaws. I don't think I'm perfect. I had a temper. There's I need to do better with finances and so on and so forth. Um, so there's things, that I'm like, hey, work on doing this better. Work on being better at this than us. So that when you have kids, they can they can be better than the next. And then, not better than the next, but our generations keep going and we're working to be better continually.
Mhm.
Um, so
It's the growth. It's the kind of the growth mindset of
yeah.
always wanting to continue to grow yourself and supporting your child or children and having that same value.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Today, we also have with us my daughter, Carmen. And I thought that we would kind of bring her in to have, just like a teenager's perspective from this dynamic. So she's been around with, the unhealthy relationship. She was really little, so I don't know really how much she remembers of that. But she's been around with the first marriage and the transition and me it being just me in the house and then me now, having her stepfather and having my fiance in the house. So I just thought it'd be kind of cool to have that perspective of, perspective is key. You can have a set of twins in the same room, go through the same thing, and they can have different perspectives because they're different people. So I just thought it'd be pretty cool to have hers. And so Julie, if you have any questions too, feel free to ask, and then we'll just kind of run with that.
Awesome. Sounds good.
So I guess the first question that I really wanted to ask you, and you can be, as detailed or as not really vague. Give a little detail, but you can be as detailed as you want. Just kind of give a little background from your perspective, relationship over the years. So it started out, you were born into the household with your father and I. And then what has that kind of been like over the years?
Really remember.
You don't remember much.
I just remember. What's his
Can I
name?
talk?
Oh, what's his name?
Mm. Well,
I
we'll just
don't-
say the X.
Yeah, I just remember the one. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't remember the beginning.
Oh yeah, because
I
you
was
were
like 2.
you were a newborn, and then yeah, like 2 whenever her father and I split. Do you
What
have?
have you liked about it? What have you liked about it?
Like seeing my mom happy
Oh,
and finally like leaving the one person who wasn't really helping
so
her.
there was a point in time where between my separation from their dad and now, where I got a house with a boyfriend at the time, which is something if I had to go back in time, I probably wouldn't have done it. My, I guess, excuse and I wouldn't recommend to them, like, oh, get a divorce and go live with a boyfriend. No, you know, go rebuild yourself. But it's one of my less finer times because he had better credit and we could get into a house sooner. And it was kind of a selfish thing for me to do. And I soon learned that he wasn't healthy for our household. And I put him out. As soon as I found out, I found out that he was not being nice to one of my children. And I immediately put all his stuff in the garage and told him he was done. But it happened.
So did you stay in the same house after he left?
Mhm. I I called so we were renting to own. I called our property manager. I told them what happened, that he was being verbally abusive to my kids. How can I get him off? And he took him off. And so
That's
long he
good.
was no longer on the lease.
Well, so what I hear and what you're saying is sort of a guilt about feeling like you did something bad to your kids. And I get
Oh,
that.
100%.
I'm also working through this feeling of like, if it didn't work out, that means I failed. But it also sounds to me like you were trying to do the best thing that you could do for your kids at that time by getting a stable place to live. And
Yes.
so it's
Yes.
not all negative, but talking about it with your daughter right now is probably good to help her to understand why you did what you did, because
Yeah.
there was a downside to it. And I understand that. I can relate to that too. And I
Yeah.
definitely feel like going forward in relationship, I don't ever want to be with somebody that my kids don't feel comfortable with. And
Yes.
I didn't mean for it to happen, but it was uncomfortable for them. And I do feel guilty about that, but there's not value in spending a lot of your energy feeling guilty about things. The value is in learning from the experience and being honest with your kids about why you did what you did, to the extent that it does matter, because they can see the strength in you, and they can also see you modeling make mistakes. We all make mistakes.
Yeah,
And then when
that's
you
fair.
see that it isn't working, what are you going to do about it? And so how do you help your experience make you a stronger person, and but what you model to your kids is really important, because they learn from everything we say and everything that we do.
Yeah.
So I think talking through it is a good thing, because then you don't give them the wrong message without realizing what it is that they're learning from what you're doing. So there's always a bunch of different factors that come together.
Yes. Yeah.
So trying to build on the strength of what you did, what you were trying to do for the right reasons. And then, what can you do about it when you feel as though you've made a mistake, or how do you make it right with your kids if you feel like you've done something that hurt them?
Yeah. Yeah. That's a really good point. Yeah.
So what was hard about those years? I know we just talked about some of it, but what are some of the things that you feel were hard for you from the child perspective?
Um, like there was nothing hard on me because I was like little and there wasn't anything. I was just chilling in the house.
Like emotionally, mentally? Or were you just little and you weren't really like aware of a lot of it?
I mean, not like with that one thing that happened, but not really anything with like the household. I mean, that kind of was in the household, but I don't talk about that.
That's completely fine.
But when you say that it makes you feel good to see your mother happy, it kind of sounds like it was hard when you saw that it was hard on her to be in the situation that she was in as well. And I mean, that's a pretty important thing for kids to feel stable when they see their parents either seeming stable and happy, or feeling like your parents are really struggling. That's a lot for you.
Yeah.
Even if you're little, sometimes you don't realize how much something is bothering you, but the first thing you said about what has going well is that you see that your mom is happy. So it probably did bother you when you felt like she wasn't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it kind of did hurt because like at the old house, she just seemed really like sad all the time, and like I would catch her crying sometimes, and it did make
Mhm.
me feel. It did make me feel a little bit sad.
Mhm. When I was a child and my parents got divorced, I think early on, and I didn't even realize it until recently, but I kind of took on responsibility for how they felt. Like I was going to try to do something to fix it, or what I should do or not do to make it easier on my mom, or to try to help my mom. And that's not really I mean, definitely isn't the child's job to do, but it's easy to kind of try to take that role on and see like, well, what can I do to help? And that puts a lot of pressure on you if that's the kind of thing that you were thinking at the time. And then when you see your mom happy, then it's kind of like the pressure is off.
Yeah,
You don't have to do that, or you
yeah,
don't feel like you should do that, even though you really shouldn't ever feel like you should do that.
Yeah. I think, with me growing up, it's kind of a difference. I guess because my mom she never really was romantically involved with anyone that I knew of or like that I saw. I don't know if that was like a good thing or a, a bad thing, but I feel like her kind of not involving me in that probably was good for me. It was kind of protecting me a little bit because, you know, she kept, I mean, obviously she never ended, she's still single. So if she was in a relationship and it went south, I never knew, you
Hmm.
know. My fiance, his mom got married to someone other than his father, and his stepdad, he was drunk, he was abusive, he was all these things, and he saw all that, you know.
Hmm.
And then you have my relationships, that they've seen, and it's interesting the different, I don't know, like the different experiences, the different dynamics and things like that. We can't control how everything goes, like we can't control how everything goes in our lives, and we can't control really how everything goes in their lives because they're separate people. Um, so I also, want to kind of point out to those who are listening, who may be single, who may be remarried, who may in whatever, situation. Um, it's good to try to protect our children to the extent that we can, but also understand that we can't protect them from everything, right? Because it's not necessary. Let me make sure that I don't word this wrong. I wouldn't say it's necessarily healthy or better to just keep everything completely separate. Then they don't really learn any life lessons. However, I think it is also better to try to find a balance, to not bring everything around them, but, you know, to try to bring the healthy situations, but also not, kind of how you were saying to me, like, not hold it against yourself if things don't go a certain way and they do experience it, if it's not something we can control. You know what I mean? And the outcome of
Yeah.
things a lot of times isn't something we can control. Most of the time it's 50-50. We both play our parts. But if someone is an alcoholic, a drug addict, they're abusive and things like that, that's not something we on the outside really can control about that person. We can try to assist, we can try to get them help and things like that, but we ultimately can't always control the actions of others. And so for that, it's not fair to hold that against yourself if someone else plays a negative role and you didn't contribute to it. But, you know what I mean?
Well, one thing I was thinking while you were talking was about how it makes a difference that if you're talking about how what you do impacts your children, it does make a difference the age of the child or the
Mhm.
personality of the child, different things about the child that will make them respond or more receptive in different ways. So like if I as a single mom have a relationship with somebody and I decide I'm not going to really let my kids know that I have this relationship until I know it's really going to be important relationship, like I don't want them to know I date. I mean, I
Yeah.
haven't been yet, but but like I was trying to, this is before in a previous time of my life, I was kind of trying to protect my kids from knowing somebody before I knew if he was going to be an
Yeah.
important person in my life.
Yeah.
But the downside of it, I thought I was doing the right thing, and I think I did do the right thing. But then on the other side, the guy really couldn't really deal with sharing my attention with my kids when he did meet them. And I felt like if I had known that sooner, I wouldn't have stayed with him that long. So nothing really bad happened.
Yeah.
But by trying to protect the kids, I also kind of created a different problem that I also don't need to be hard on myself about. It's just that life's not perfect and you can't control all the details, but whatever happens, there's like a teachable moment there. There's something that you can gain from it, even if it's a challenge. Now my son says, Mom, would you tell me if you had a boyfriend? So I have a almost 16-year-old son. And he said to me not that long ago, would you tell me if you had a boyfriend? And I said, thinking the way that I was thinking before,
Yeah.
I wouldn't really want to involve you in something that isn't going to be anything really. I would want to make sure that it's going to be somebody that I feel is important. And he said, oh, well, I would just be happy for you if you had, if you had a boyfriend, like you can tell me, I want you to tell me if you have a first date. And so, that's him being supportive, and he really is a wonderful person. And he knows that through all the ups and downs that we've been through, that I've really tried to help support him. And, he's been through some things he shouldn't have ever had to go through, but
Right.
I have done the best I could to protect him and to move us out of, a situation that was also toxic. The household dynamics were toxic. And so without having to point any fingers, I mean, I support his relationship with his father too, but it's all like, life lessons. It's not, life is never perfect. So
100%.
whatever happens, you take the good part and, oh yeah, I'm definitely going to take this and do this again in the future. And sometimes you say, well, I guess I learned from that experience and I don't need to beat myself up again, but I'm going to make sure I don't do that again.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. My one of my older kids, they recently were in a relationship, and their partner started being kind of verbally abusive, I want to say. I mean, the things that they were saying, and they didn't tell me about this, at first. They did tell me about it. They talked to me about it and they asked for my advice and things like that. But this young adult, I should say, not kid, but this young adult stood up for themselves and said, "Hey, you know what? I'm not going to allow you to treat me this way." I took it for a little bit, I just kind of tried to brush it off, but then the more I thought about it, I don't deserve this, and so this relationship is done, and that's it. And I was so proud because it's just like how she was talking about this unsuccessful relationship I had, you know, looking at the life experience aspect, that relationship and what this young adult went through probably impacted that conversation. Like they saw that, hey, I don't have to tolerate this, and I deserve more, and this relationship is done because I don't, I deserve better. So, just kind of look at it that way. The sunny side of things, you know, just kind of an example to, I do kind of, I hold myself responsible for the negative stuff that happened, but it's situations like that not that I would go back in time and be like, yeah, let's still have this happen, but I can't change it regardless. But it makes me happy to know that they took this experience potentially and was like, no, I won't let that continue in my cycle, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. So do you think that there's a lot of difference between the way that your kids experienced it, or maybe do you feel like you and your siblings experienced all of that in a similar way, or do you think you saw it really differently?
No, I feel like I didn't like. I feel like DeAndre or the two oldest probably experienced it the worst because they were older
Mm-hmm.
and they lived through more.
You can say their names. I just didn't want to put their relationship business with their names, but you can say their names. That's fine.
Well,
Yeah.
Jada and DeAndre, but not as much me, and definitely not.
Yeah, because Noah wasn't. He didn't exist then. So.
So at the time you're older, is it a brother and a sister?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So you feel like they experienced it more, it was more challenging for them because they were older and more aware and more interactive with what was going on. How do you think how do you guys all feel about it now?
I feel like they still. I mean, they don't really talk about it as much. They're grown more, but it still probably affected them a lot, and I can tell.
You can tell by the way, the kind of relationships that they have now.
Yeah, and like they say certain things about it whenever it comes up.
So maybe are you kind of saying it's unresolved for them?
No, not really. I think they've all gotten over it, and I'm not worried. Yeah, they've just gotten over it.
Mm-hmm.
Like if they saw the person in the streets, they wouldn't speak to him. But
Mm-hmm.
Not DeAndre.
no,
DeAndre wouldn't.
DeAndre might speak to him. It might not be very nice
Yeah.
what he would say, but
But Jada.
probably would just walk past him and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah, it's hard to resolve those things, but I think but when you say that your daughter, was it your daughter who had the relationship that you were just talking about?
Mhm.
And she had a strong enough sense of self to choose not to stay in a relationship that wasn't serving her. That's a good indicator that she's grown, that she's,
absolutely.
because I think we can repeat patterns when things are unresolved. And so you can sometimes see where some growth is, still needed by that kind of thing.
Yeah. That it was a pretty proud moment because like while I wish she didn't have to go through that at all, I was proud of her for standing up for herself and realizing that she needed to stand up for herself because
Mhm.
people in relationships like that sometimes don't realize they need to stand up for themselves. They think that they deserve it, or they just take it, it'll get better, and so on and so forth. And, you know, I think I've never been in a physically abusive relationship. Uh, I've never really been in like a verbally abusive relationship. This person was more kind of mean to them. Not really. I mean, he and I got into a couple little spats, but especially when I found out. But you know, uh, I forgot what I was saying.
Well, I think that's a important point, though. That's part of being in a blended family, is
Mhm.
how each adult is interacting with the other person's family, the other person's children. And
Mhm.
so if that isn't a strong link in the chain, it's just not going to work. That's why I think for a
100%.
blended family to really work well together, it starts with the leadership, which is the couple who,
Yes.
are making an intentional commitment to each other, but to the whole family, to how are they going to commit to the other person's children, and how are they going to support each other when there are challenges, because maybe step siblings don't get along, or the
Mhm.
step parent and the whoops, sorry about my phone. I can't. Anyway, you can talk for a minute.
Okay. Yeah, one thing I've noticed about my youngest is he's very, he does the little spatty sibling stuff with the siblings, they whatever, normal sibling stuff. But with me and his father both, he's very lovey and, huggy, and even with his dad, he'll, grab him by the neck and he'll jump on him and he'll hug him, and, very loving and hugging and things like that. And I think uh partly it comes from he sees how we are to one another. Um, his dad is very lovey and huggy with me. Um, it took me a minute because I'm not as much of a physical or like mushy person in a relationship. Past experiences, I became a certain way, but I've kind of grown a little bit in that aspect with him because he is, and it's that love language thing. I
Hmm.
want to provide the love language that he needs, and so I'm willing to grow a little bit, in myself to make sure that his needs are met too. Um, but it reflects. My oldest two kids are not too physically affectionate. Like, if it's my birthday, they'll give me a hug. They'll tell me they love me on, a regular basis or whatever, but they're not really like physically affectionate people. Um, and they didn't see a lot of physical affection. My um oh the dog snoring in the background. It's all right. My was that physically affectionate?
You were saying your older kids give you a little hug on your birthday, but no, but they're
Oh
just not
yeah.
affectionate people, really.
Yeah. And they saw, like, with my ex-husband when we were good, but they also saw the downfalls and things like that. And I know that it's affected their relationships a little bit more too. They're a little bit more hesitant in relationships and even physical touch in general and stuff like that. Whereas the younger three, my 14 and 16-year-olds will still lay on me. You know,
Mhm.
they're, they don't like so much if I'm like hugging all over them, but they come lay on me and it's fine. They're,
Mhm.
more affectionate in that way and stuff like that. And I think partly too because they've had a longer span of seeing that positive interactions with,
Mhm.
I was their dad and I will still give each other a hug.
Mhm.
We're friends, and we
Yeah.
have kids together, so why not? But you know, and I see the difference. I see the difference in the kids who have seen more of kind of not as solid relationships, and their affectionate affection and things like that, how they are in relationships, opposed to the ones that have seen more of healthy relationship and how they
Mhm.
are even with their affection and stuff like that. So it's interesting. It's like I said, we've established you can't go back and change the past. You can only work on the future and move forward. But it is one of those things. It's one of those things that I've noticed. And with me too, uh I it's one thing my mom kind of pointed out with me. She's like, my whole life, I wish you were more affectionate. I wish you were more affectionate. I don't really remember them ever being together because I was so little.
Mhm.
And then, my father remarried. He could be affectionate, but he could also be drunk and mean. So there's that. And then, you know, my mother, I never saw her in another relationship. So, you've got these kind of three different dynamics where with the older two, myself and my younger kids, and it's there's a little bit of difference in each. You can tell with the life experience. I try to intentionally be affectionate with my mother because I know that she likes the hugs and things like that, and the sweet little texts and I love yous and stuff. But that's also I worked on growing to be a different person and trying to focus in on other people's needs and not just my own too.
Mhm.
So that to me was kind of an important growth for myself. And it's not easy, when you've gone through certain relationships and you've experienced certain things and you want to just kind of shut off from the world. Like, if I didn't give birth to you, I don't want you touching me, kind of thing. Cause I've been there too. But it's important for self-growth that, you know, you you get to a place in life where part of taking care of yourself is self-growth and not necessarily catering to, but paying attention to and growing and develop the relationships around you, whether it be exes or, current or whatever, your kids, your former spouse, your parents.
Yeah, there are a lot of factors. You're
Yeah.
talking about how you developed your way of interacting with people, which starts with, there's part of it is your personality style, your love language, part of it is your experience, and part of it is how you choose to grow. And
Yeah.
the same, all of those, I mean, that's probably just a few of the factors, right? But
Right.
but
Right.
with all of the people in your household, part of it is responding to them according to their personality style, valuing them
Yeah.
and accepting them and seeing them and loving them for who they are and the personality style where sometimes somebody's personality style is more challenging for us than somebody else's and but those things are all aspects of who we are. So
Mhm.
so that's part of the reasons that we get along or we don't get along. But if we can
Yeah.
really take a honest look at ourselves and see where our strengths are, what's my personality style, then I can understand what other personality style is going to be challenging for me. And then instead of looking at that person with criticism, I look at that person and say, wow, that's that's the challenging personality style. So, how can I reframe my perspective about it and,
Mhm.
look at them and because you really the more you have reasons or factors that could separate, like
Mhm.
in a blended family that happens,
Right.
with different relationships, the more it, I think, is important to intentionally see each other for who we are and not feel categorized. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That's a really good point. Yeah. Because it is easy. You know, my kids are all they consider themselves brothers and sisters. There's no half brother, half sister thing in my house. And, that's even their choice. With me and my sister, there's been points in life where I have very strongly made it a point she was my half sister. that's partly to do with the fact that there were certain things that I didn't know. Like, I didn't know about my father and my stepmom's relationship. I really had an unfair view of my stepmom for a really long time in my life because, I was biased. I love my mom, so I can't love her too, you
Mhm.
know? And she, quote unquote, let my father do all these things and blah, blah, blah. But it wasn't really till I grew up and I worked on myself and worked on my growth and my perspective. I was like, oh, you know what? Everything that I've thought about her is really invalid because
Mhm.
I just wanted to take my mom's side so bad, and I didn't realize that, oh, I can we can be cool too, like
Mhm.
she was actually trying to look out for me and I, that's a whole nother conversation, but it's yeah, perspective. You can have many different perspectives in a household. No two people are the same. So, and
Mhm.
like I said before, everyone in the household has a different life experience, a different perspective. Um, it's it's important that going through this that we also pay attention to that. Um, our own life experiences, our own needs as the mom, as the dad, as the step parent, and as the kids. Therapy, therapy, and coaching.
Yeah.
Push them. Even if it's like I don't know, I don't really know if they need it. It's fine. Therapy's not gonna hurt them.
Mhm.
Coaching is not gonna hurt us. Like, if anything else, we'll gain something from it, and we go into it, we don't feel like it's for us, then cool, at least we tried, kinda
Well,
thing.
it might just be that you learn to speak more openly, communicate
Yeah.
your needs and your feelings more openly and feel accepted when you're doing it. Like just all of you, it's like a family culture.
Yeah.
You have a family culture of openness
Mhm.
to listening to each other and to understanding each other so that everybody can feel like their needs are met.
Absolutely. Yep. Yep. Well, we're running
Before
out of
we run
time.
out of time
I
again.
know. Again, 'cause we could probably be here a couple more hours from now. We're gonna
Yeah.
wrap up today, and, I knew I pressed something, I just didn't know what it was. Oh, okay. Miss Julie will be back. We have established that she is gonna return back to us, and I'm very excited about that because I love our conversations. We always go over our time,
Yeah.
and I like to like the kind of coaching perspective that you bring to the conversation, because there's certain things that you've said today that I'm like, oh, I see you. I see
Well,
what you
thank you. I enjoy it as well, and I appreciate your daughter. Is your name is Carmen?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate you joining the conversation. I know that it was a little bit weird or uncomfortable, or you felt like your mom put you on the spot, but hopefully we made you feel a little more comfortable because you have a really important perspective to share. So thanks for sharing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I've, you know, sidebar kind of thing. That's something I've tried to work on over the years too, is making sure that I have conversations with them and let them know, like, y'all know, correct me if I'm wrong, but that y'all can talk to me about stuff. Even if we don't have the same perspective, even if we don't agree on it, you're not me. You're completely allowed to have a different opinion, different perspective, and stuff like that. And that's something that for a long time now I've tried to make sure that I instill in them because
Yep.
it wasn't something that I was always aware of, and so it's not always something that I've taught them, but it's something that I don't know. I feel like some households you can't talk to your parents. You go out, you do stupid stuff because you can't have conversations, or you talk to the wrong people.
Mhm.
And I've done that as a
Yep.
teenager, and it wasn't healthy. And so I want to make sure that that's not the case.
Yep.
You don't have to always agree with me. Just be respectful about how you disagree with me.
Yep.
You know,
Well, or getting in trouble. I mean, I've had that happen with my kids, and one of my kids had a quote on his Facebook page. This is years ago, but he had a quote on his Facebook page that said, if it involves bail money, call your mother. They're good kids, but they've done stuff like everybody does, you know, and the one who got caught for things, you know, a few different times. And I was really grateful that he felt like he could call me when the things happened. And that way he doesn't get into more trouble because he doesn't have a safe way to get home from there or whatever it is. And then we could talk about, like, not that I ever wanted, I've never been a punitive kind of parent, but it's like, I want you to have a healthy life and I love you. You're one of the most important people on the planet. So how can I help you to make good decisions for yourself? Because it's your life, you know?
Yeah. I told all of them, specifically my older kids, because they shouldn't be drinking anytime soon. But you know, even so, say if you tried something, you're somewhere and the area is unsafe, or you don't feel safe getting in your car, or you've put something in your body that you shouldn't be driving with, call me. Like, I turn my phone off when I'm asleep, but all of them are emergency contacts. So if the phone rings, it's going to ring. I don't like being woken up out of my sleep. However, if it's waking me up out of your sleep to get home safe or just not calling me, call me and wake me up. Don't not get home safe. I'd rather be mad at you for making a stupid choice than have you dead. So, and
you can say that to your kids' friends too, to make sure that they have a safe. One of my mother's friends said that to me when I was a teenager, and I never called her, but I knew I could, and that was a really, really important thing for kids to know, that they have somebody that they can call. Absolutely. We're going to get cut off.
I know. Tell us real quick where we can find you, and then we'll see you next time.
All right. Empowering Blended Families on Facebook, and I look forward to being here next time.
Thank you. Bye.
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 If anyone wants to chime in, or if anybody has questions they want us to answer or topics to discuss, you can leave that on the Facebook page. Visit www.philolity.net. That's FALOLITY, where you can purchase your own copy of Surviving Mom Brain and Dad Brain workbooks, as well as my autobiography.
Adios, mi amigos.